with all the big news that's been going on and around with stuff regarding DC and the takeover there with James Gunn and Peter Safran, I believe the absolute best news that could have possibly happened with DC. For the first time in a long time, I feel super optimistic about the future of DC, even if, and we don't know it doesn't, but even if it means my beloved Henry Cavill won't be playing Superman anymore, which we don't know if he will or not, but we know it's up in the air. We'll see. One of the big questions that I keep getting, I literally got it from 3 separate people over the weekend, that people wrote into our mail-in section, asking, but will James Gunn direct anything? And Rob, you and I have talked about this a little bit over the past couple of weeks about with James Gunn, who is such an incredible director, whether you're looking at Super or you're looking at Slither. My favorite film of his, by the way, is Slither. It's absolutely amazing. Whether you're talking about Guardians or Peacemaker or his Suicide Squad, which was fantastic, even if it didn't do anything financially, it was a fantastic movie. Wouldn't it be a bit of a shame, though, if him taking over DC Studios means he can't really direct? Because, Rob, a lot of people forget sometimes that when we say you're a director, but you actually directed a film with William Shatner, right?
It's true.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that probably for you over a certain period of time was all-consuming. Like directing isn't a hobby. It's not something you do for 1 or 2 hours a day, right? It's pretty much all-consuming when you're making that film.
Yeah, and I also co-wrote the script and edited the film, so it was, it was all-consuming. And not only that, John, before we got to make the movie, we had to go to meetings for the better part of a year to convince people to give us the money. Right. So you're wandering around talking to people, and then It is, and I would say then once we made the movie, we went on the festival circuit. So it was a 2-year proposition once we had the script,
right,
to try and get the money to make the movie, to edit the movie, to put it through post. It was, there you go. There's Eric McCormack from Will and Grace.
That was in your movie as well.
Rafer Weigel, who just he's now the latest. He's in San Diego. He's a sportscaster. I mean, he's on the 10 o'clock news. He's the news anchor. And Shatner. And by the way, that is the late lamented Iliad bookstore in LA before it moved. But yes, I mean, it was a 2-year proposition, all encompassing.
Right.
And at the same time, because it was an independent movie, I didn't have any other money. So I was having to edit and do other things to make money.
But even if you weren't editing it, you would have to be in there with overseeing the edit, overseeing all the posts. So so take that and understand that. Running a studio, we've talked recently about how Kevin Feige has just lost control of, I don't mean he's lost control, but I mean, he can no longer have the type of oversight over Marvel anymore because there's so much going on with Marvel. That is a full-time job.
Yeah.
Running a studio is a full-time job. So it has really confounded me how James Gunn will direct or could direct movies while also trying to run a studio. However, that being said, continuing to direct some of the movies, he will. Now, I'm going to refer us back to an article in the Hollywood Reporter that came out back at the end of October. This is the one that announced the world. This is the one that shocked all of us, that James Gunn and Peter Safran were taking over DC Films. Now, in a paragraph in that, it says this: Gunn, this is in the Hollywood Reporter, will focus on the creative side of things with DC, while Safran will focus on the business and production side. Both are expected to continue to direct and produce projects respectively. Peter Safran's not a director, so the directing part was clearly referencing James Gunn. We want to take a second to thank the sponsor of this video, HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. It is the most festive time of the year, and HelloFresh is here to help make the most of every moment. From holiday hosting to dinners during busy weeknights, you can count on HelloFresh to deliver fresh ingredients and seasonal recipes. Because 'tis the season for saving money wherever we can. HelloFresh is cheaper than grocery store shopping and 25% less expensive than takeout. You can use those savings for holiday gifts or treat yourself. Guys, you know, I've told you before that with Ann and I both being working professionals, finding time to prepare dinner together can be a chore, but HelloFresh has made it easy and fun for us to make our own meals, and most importantly to me, they're delicious. You will actually enjoy making dinner. So right now, go to hellofresh.com/Campea18 and use the code Campea18 for 18 free meals plus free shipping. Once again, go to hellofresh.com/Campea18 and use the code Campea18 for 18 free meals plus free shipping. So according to that very first, a lot of people have been writing and asking, will James Gunn ever direct again? Because it's great that he's running the studio, but it'd be a real shame if we lose him as a director in this DC universe. Well, referring us back again to that first article, that he does intend to continue to direct. Now, can we expect him to direct at the same amount of stuff that he's directed in the past? Obviously not. He's got a new full-time job. And Rob, even though, you know, he has said, the Hollywood Reporter reported it, he's still planning on directing films. I don't know how the hell you do it. Now, at least he's got a partner in Peter Safran that can shoulder some of the load. But, you know, looking back at your time directing Free Enterprise, and, you know, you directed television as well and all that kind of stuff, could you imagine, I mean, how could you picture that period of time that you were directing Free Enterprise and having another full-time job? Like, that blows my mind.
Well, the only way I could see it happening is if, obviously, they're going to have multiple projects. They would have to spend the time before James went into pre-production and set up a slate. So if you set up a slate and hired 3 or 4 directors to begin making movies, and James being one of those directors, those films would all leave the station and they would have them, you know, they'd go on the tracks to get made. Peter Safran would have to oversee the producing of it, and James would be making one of his movies. He would be there to consult, but you'd have like 3 or 4 films being made at the same time concurrently, because then they couldn't do anything more. So then after he would shoot, I mean, principal photography, if you figure if it lasts like 100 days, so he'd be off the grid directing
a little over 3 months.
Yeah. And then
there's all the pre-production.
I can't even, dude. I can't even imagine. You'd have to have. But then again, on the other hand, as somebody who's now directed 4 major tentpole movies for studios, 1 for Warner Brothers, 3 for Disney, he would be probably pretty good at delegating to people, and he'd have to have his assistants. He'd have to have a great staff. I'm sure he would have a staff of people, and they would manage. He would manage his time within an inch of its life, within a second of its life. Like he might even get into work before he directs and spend 2 hours of time on studio business before he got to set. It'd be brutal.
It would be brutal.
Brutal. I can't even imagine.
Let me throw something by you here. You know, often people talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe as it's treated. I haven't heard them say this in a while, but during phases 1, 2, and 3, a lot of people would often compare the Marvel Cinematic Universe to, like, say, a television show, and each new episode comes out, right? Let me throw this by. What do you think about this? You and I have both said that going away from the Marvel formula, because formula doesn't do shit. Going away from the Marvel formula, start the new by the way, we don't know there's going to be a new DCEU.
Right.
We don't know if they're rebooting the universe or not. That is one of the possibilities, but we don't know that. Just want to give that caveat there. But if they did, starting off the new DC universe, bam, right out of the gate, Justice League, right out of the gate. In television, we know that they always tend to bring in their biggest or best director for the first episode, because the pilot episode of a television show sets the tone for what the whole show needs to be modeled after. What about a James Gunn directed Justice League movie? He's the head of DC. He sets the tone for the entire DC universe. They launch it out with the Justice League movie. I don't know. Do you think that's something that could possibly happen?
I do. And, you know, somebody tagged me on Instagram yesterday and talked about the fact that I had brought up if he went and did the more comedic version of Justice League International, the comic from the mid-'80s that Kevin Maguire drew. I wasn't saying that James Gunn should make an all-out
of course not. No, we don't believe
Justice
that at all.
League. But what I was talking about is a different tone. Tonally, like the Guardians of Forever is not an overtly comedic movie. It's not a yuck comedy. It has a lot of comedy in it, but it has a lot of serious pathos. I mean, the movie opens with Peter Quill's mother dying of cancer.
Yeah.
So the thing that I was saying is that what the DCEU, I think overall, what they're looking for is a more fun, lighter, buoyant tone, the way Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, dude, Slither's got some brutal stuff in it, but it's hilarious at the same.
It's a great horror comedy.
It's a great horror comedy, and James Gunn knows how to weave in and out of those tones, which is something that we talked about Man of Steel. As much as you and I really like Man of Steel. Like I love
that
Man of Steel. But even you agreed with me when I said what it is missing is that joy.
A little bit of joy.
That fun joy. And by the way, by design, it's not a movie that failed to do something. Man of Steel was exactly the movie Zack Snyder wanted to make. I really liked it. I always saw it as a very serious first contact science fiction bent on Superman. It didn't have the Smallville, running. Clark is working for the football team and somebody dumps over all the uniforms and he has to clean them up. It wasn't that. But what the DC universe needs, I think, Aquaman had that joy in it.
It did. It had that nice mix.
Yeah. And so that's where I would say that we're looking for him to go. But like you said, he will set the tone. He could direct the pilot, so to speak, and then he'll hang back and then do studio business and shepherd 3 movies into existence while he finishes his. I mean, I could see it working. I don't envy him.
All right, guys, question is for you. What do you think about that, James? I think the vast majority of us who have any common sense are pretty damn happy that James Gunn is going to be running the DC universe with Peter Safran. But how is he going to pull off actually directing films? If he does, should he do the first one right out of the gate to kind of set the tone? I don't know. Whatever you guys think is going to happen, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.